Hey there. So before I get started here, obviously this is part 2 of the DMC video that I'm making. If you missed part 1, then it'll be in the description. And I would recommend watching that first before watching this one because I'm not going over the beginning part of the game. And yeah, other than that, have a good one. Huh, that's weird. I wonder why I would say... Oh, there it goes. Guess we're not going back that way for a while. So 2 things. Going behind this monolith thing reveals a secret item. Just press the check button behind it and you'll find a devil star. These, like vital stars, will recover devil trigger gauges whenever you use them. You can also buy them in the store. It pays to check every nook and cranny of an area because even if you don't find an item or a health upgrade, you might find a stock of red orbs behind there. These enemies are referred to as blades. From this point forward, they're going to be probably the second most common enemy in the game. They won't outright replace marionettes necessarily, but I still find it kind of interesting to know that they're going to be really common enemies from this point on. The only thing that's really noteworthy about them is that they're probably the most aggressive out of any of the normal enemies that you'll face. Like to the point where you should probably expect some sort of opening attack before you get the ability to do anything else, which is as easy as just dodging them or jumping over them or whatever. I didn't even know that there was a variant of blades in this game called assaults. As far as I can tell, they don't really do anything different except for maybe they just have a slightly different color, but I literally didn't even notice it until I checked the bestiary, so I guess it doesn't really matter too much. Similarly speaking, the marionettes also have a variant called a Bloody Mary, which are the red ones. I think their only defining feature is that they have a grab attack, which you'll see a couple times in this playthrough. You know what's also very Resident Evil? Going into a new area and seeing a bunch of locked doors with weird ornate keys that you need for them, which is what's going on now. This sconce here doesn't react to anything that we do to it, so I guess we'll just have to come back later. The shields over here also don't do anything, and neither does the door in the center. I guess it's not hard to figure out where you have to go, you just follow the little blue fires. So we make our way over to this hallway, hit this switch, and... oh good, DMC platforming. Yay. So if you're familiar with this franchise, you might understand that there's one instance of these in, like, every DMC game. And I don't think they're ever fondly remembered, necessarily. At worst, they waste your time just because of how the weird jumping physics works in all of these games. And at best, they're easy enough to be inoffensive. There's not really any stake to missing a jump, necessarily. You just kind of waste time, which... I mean, I guess if you're going for S ranks or something, but usually the time wasted isn't very much. Couple that with the weird dedicated jump angle that you have, and like the lack of a drop shadow for instance, and you can see why this isn't a good platformer game. This is certainly not the worst offender of it. As the series goes on, we'll be able to see more and more of these weird platforming things you have to do. And yeah, none of them are particularly great. Also, I understand that the bridge had a platforming puzzle back whenever we were in the castle. The broken segments of the bridge... What? The broken segments of the bridge turn into basically little floating timed platforms. And I'd actually argue that that part is worse in terms of platforming than this right here, but whatever, they're all kind of eh. Okay, so Ifrit is sick. And first things first, I know that it's actually pronounced Ifrit, but fuck you. I've pronounced it Ifrit for literally years, so I'm not changing it anytime soon. Basically, 99% of your attacks can be charged whenever you're using the gauntlets. And just in general, this thing hits like a truck.
The son of Sparta who challenges the darkness for this.
Block off, Featherface, or you can stick around and find out the hard way.
So naturally, the first thing that Capcom does is give us an enemy that we can't even reach with melee, let alone stubby gauntlets. This boss is Griffin. Like I said before, he's an airborne enemy that likes to pelt us at range. He's ultimately pretty simple if you know what to do, which in a single term is best defined as completely defensive playstyle and just keep wailing on him with your pistols. His health bar isn't very big, so especially if you turn on Devil Trigger, you can start just melting his HP bar with Ebony and Ivory and it won't take any time at all. Although that does mean that every encounter you have with him is gonna basically shred your hand because you're mashing the button so fucking hard. I'd hate to see this fight in like the higher difficulties because, man, you are given a couple of opportunities to attack him whenever he's on the ground. Namely, wailing on him enough times will make him just kind of fall over, and from there you can do like a couple full combos on him and that looks like it hits really hard. Another thing, if you want to try to chance it, you can also jump on his back and freely do damage to him there, even if he goes back up in the air. I do find it really easy to fall off of him though, just like Phantom. But if it happens, then cool, you get some free damage out of it. So like with Phantom, I wouldn't go out of my way to do it, but if you're jumping around trying to dodge and happen to land on his back, it's not like he can do anything there. Oh yeah, so this is also the first boss that doesn't have any cutscenes playing after he's gone. It's one of those areas that made my childhood imagination run wild with just how big I thought it was, but it's a super tiny little foggy forest. Oh hey, orbs. So, fun fact, I lied again. There's actually a third variant to the marionettes, and this one is unfortunately called the Fetish. It works like just about every other marionette you come across, except for the difference is they like to relentlessly block your attacks if your combos become too repetitive.
And feet.
They're not exceptionally dangerous, especially if you just mix up your combo strings. Things like doing a full delay combo, basically just how it's intended, is how they retaliate to you, so mix it up with a launcher or something, and there'll be no trouble at all after that. Also, like the shadows, these enemies don't appear in easy mode. So yeah, you might notice now with the shop, there's fire in the background along with the lightning, and that's because we have Ifrit now. Having Ifrit equipped or otherwise in our inventory will also change little things about the UI and stuff too. Also, now that we have Ifrit, going to the shop will reveal to us that there is a new menu option for it. Of course, it's a new weapon type, and spoilers, it's the only other weapon type in the game. In fact, I don't know if calling it a type is even fair. I've thought about this for a good long while too, but I don't think I'm going to be necessarily going over every single move of all the weapons. There are shorter, more concise videos that do that better, and for me it would just take way too long to grind up all the orbs necessary for it. And unless otherwise prevalent, I'll basically only mention the necessary moves that we have for the weapons. I believe this is our second to last red door. And I have nothing more to say for that. So, funny thing about this save screen for a minute, in case you can't tell, I'm playing this currently on an emulator. That little section where it has the time, like game time displayed on it, on my original PS2 save file, I actually looped the timer, which means I spent like over 100 in-game hours in DMC1 just by itself. Obviously that means I played this game a lot as a kid. Anyway, this mission basically involves us running through sort of a lost maze kind of scenario. Basically interact with this little gleaming soul thing, and if it flies into an enemy, just kill the enemy real quick, follow whatever direction it goes in, and take the path it takes in order to get out of here. You'll have to do this a couple of times, and each path you go down has different enemies, sort of preventing your line of travel and the line of travel of the soul. Obviously, you can fail this by going in the wrong direction of the soul, but you can also fail it by not having killed the enemy that the soul flew into, in which case both of the paths are wrong and you'll just be sent back to the beginning. Which, given that whenever you're playing on normal mode or harder, there are two shadows that appear in one of these rooms, which can be really, really brutal if you fail it more than once. What is up with this game and mean off-screen attacks? These enemies are called Cyclops, which is kind of a funny name for a spider enemy. They both look and fight exactly like Phantom, just kind of mini-boss versions of them, and this is the only time you see them in the regular gameplay. Not really much else to say, they're just Phantom with lesser health bars. Also, what is this guy doing? Do you want to talk about it? You alright? Oh, okay, there he goes. Can I get like an S rank at least once, please? So yeah, immediately opening up this mission with another mini-boss fight. Also, yeah, in case you forgot, this is the colossally easier version of the Death Scissor enemy, the Death Scythe. As I alluded to before, the only thing super noteworthy about this enemy is that he has these, like, weird spell platforms that'll shoot you up in the air and leave you open for an attack, but it's not like his retaliation is a big deal, just jump out of the way or attack him and it's fine. What makes this enemy even more goofy is that you can just ignore him, like it never mattered in the first place. So also, because I don't have anywhere else to put it, I'll just say that a cool thing the game doesn't actually tell you about is that if you click the right stick down, you'll swap in between Alistor and Ifrit, without the need for a menu at all. The games further into the series do weapon swapping better, but this is still pretty convenient. Okay, so, Nella Angela rematch. There's nothing super different in his moveset this time around, he just has a couple more of your attacks basically, but what is pretty noteworthy is what we bring to this fight actually. The sheer power of Ifrit here means that even our charge attacks can break his block. I really like that in this fight specifically. They pit you up against a swordsman after you just got fire gauntlets. But instead of forcing you to use Alistor, you can use Ifrit if you want to. I mean, sure, you have to adjust your strategy a little bit, but if you want to throw hands with a swordsman, you absolutely can. And you're not punished for it, which is just neat. I mean, ultimately, Devil Trigger is Devil Trigger, so just use that if you feel like you need to. Oh, okay. The only time the game actually gives us a tutorial, and it's for water controls. Sure. I'm sure this won't be clunky at all. I don't know why, but the one thing that really reminds me of Resident Evil 4 about this game is this brick texture in the background. Like, to me, that's an unmistakably Resident Evil 4 texture, and I don't know how else to describe it. Like, am I crazy for saying that, or do y'all feel the same way? I don't know. Wow, that sure is a whole pirate ship. Huh, well, let's go ahead and take a look real fast. Oh, okay. Oh god, the controls are reversed. This is weird. Okay. Yeah, they would put enemies underwater. We don't have any ability to fight them yet, so we're just gonna avoid them anytime we see enemies that we can't reach. The only enemies you'll find underwater are the blades, and maybe assaults, I'm not sure. But their only attack is firing their nails at you, which you have a dodge mechanic underwater. It's relatively easy to avoid, just kind of keep an eye on them and listen for them firing their claws. Oh wait, never mind, there are two enemies that fight underwater. It's the blades and or assaults, and then also the Sin Scissor. We'll see them later, don't worry about it. Also, cool, we just got the needle gun. This is probably the only weapon you absolutely don't need to pick up. It's just completely unnecessary for the most part. Unless, of course, you're going for completion, which will involve you fighting enemies that you can't necessarily run away from. And when we get back underwater, I'll explain how the needle gun works. But yeah, I really like the ghost ship. Like, I don't know, this environment's just really cool to me, and it's super unique for a DMC game specifically. I think it being tied to the water mechanics means that the ghost ship can only really be a thing in DMC 1 because, like, the underwater combat, if you want to call it that, isn't necessarily conducive to a character action game in any capacity, period. But the atmosphere of this area and being underwater specifically in this game is super memorable to me. Why would you put an enemy behind me whenever I have 360-degree tank controls? So yeah, firing the needle gun basically works like firing a gun above the water. Hold R1 and then press square or X to fire the gun. The needle gun is kind of like a burst machine gun almost. It fires in bursts of 5 shots, and basically in all the difficulties it does good damage because it's your only option for combat underwater. But other than that, that's literally it for the needle gun. Like, it's there for the sake of fighting things underwater, I don't know. Also, yeah, you can strafe left and right while underwater. So, you know, at least it's not completely brainless. You know, I bet the model artist was really proud of this ship. Good for them. It's a cool ship. Yeah, I mean, sure, I'll fight a death scythe, that's fine. So, two things about this specifically. You can tell you're fighting a death scythe or a death scissor by basically looking at the environment and seeing their kind of calling cards. The literal one time we fought a death scissor had those weird blue things and the skull on the wall, back in the sewers, all the way back in the castle. And here, there's extra size on the ground, presumably so that he can throw the one he's using at you, or I don't really know. But yeah, kinda cool. Also, this is the only time you're forced to fight a death scythe in normal mode. The other ones can just be ran past. It's kind of really goofy looking. Okay, cool, time to shred my arm again. 2 new things for this Griffin fight. One, he'll have this bird kinda lock onto you and throw you up into the air really hard, but it doesn't do any damage to you, so it's whatever. That, and then also, because of the ship being so small, he can't land, so better just mash ebony and ivory. So despite the serious tone of both the music and the cutscene that just played, you're not actually timed here in any way. You're free to just go throughout the ship now that it's sunk. Very occasionally you'll be blocked by assaults that are just in the way. And yes, the weird demon doors can still grab you when you're underwater. So yeah, another really short mission. I didn't realize it until I was editing the video, but that mission only lasted like 3 loading zones at the very most. Oh hey, the second intermission. So this specific little bit of the game is really interesting to me. Let's go ahead and enter the ship again, since we just have that option all of a sudden. If we navigate all the way back up to the captain's quarters, we can interact with his body. So yeah, what I've kind of colossally failed to mention thus far is that there are such things as secret missions in DMC. All the DMC games have them, but specifically in this game, they're typically tied to finding load zones either through doors or otherwise interactables. I think this is the only time it happens during an intermission. You typically find them mid-mission, going back through areas that you wouldn't think to go through again, and they typically have some sort of challenge waiting for you. The reason I pick this one in specific and not any other to pick is because of how it makes me, I don't know, just... So, you know, like the eel in Super Mario 64, and specifically most of Dire Dire Docks is like kind of childhood trauma for a lot of kids. I have a somewhat particular fear of water in a lot of like retro games especially, but I wouldn't necessarily call it like thalassophobia or anything. I think specifically as a kid I was a lot more prone to just having weird innate fears that I didn't know that I had, of things that just kind of made me uncomfortable. Which, I mean, obviously the fucking trees in the beginning part of the game were weird and kind of scary to me. But the thing specifically with this secret mission, well, I mean, just look at it. I didn't know retroactive childhood trauma was a thing, but like looking at this secret mission makes me think that I would definitely be scared of it as a kid. So I guess it's kind of a good thing that I only discovered it relatively recently. And yeah, there's that. Also, yeah, secret missions always net you blue orbs whenever you complete them. The ones in this game specifically are stupidly hard. At least most of them are. So I've never gone out of my way to do any of them unless they're just ones that I know how to do that are super easy. And obviously I'm not going to show every one of them off. There's good resources to see all of them anyway, so, you know. Okay, so that was a thing. Let's go ahead and start the next mission. Right, that's a good sign. Right, okay, that figures. So thankfully the spikes don't do very much damage at all, but obviously if they get you in a stun lock, then it can send you back towards the wall, which will obviously hurt some more, but also sorta just resets your progress. So just pay attention to the intervals of the spikes going up, and you'll be able to pass it no problem. Hell yeah, dude, what a cool waterfall. Yeah, it'd probably be wise to take a shower about now. So I want to show something off real quick also that the game doesn't mention. There's a technique that players like to refer to as a stinger jump. Basically, if you're hugging a ledge and then input the stinger command, you'll do this sort of unique looking long jump. There are some instances where this is kind of like a canned animation, like if you're jumping a gap across a bridge or something, and those times work pretty consistently for it, but in that instance it's just kind of a regular long jump. Typically, if you're supposed to use a stinger jump, it's to get you to a secret area, like this over here with the blue orb. Also, yeah, it's not like you use stinger jumps all that often, basically in any DMC game, but basically anytime I see a ledge, I like to just stinger jump off of it anyway because it feels good. Oh good, more Death Scythe. We're just gonna avoid these ones again. And here's the last red orb door of the entire series. Yeah, I never knew why this was a mechanic in the first game, and I guess it has no real reason for being in the other games anyway, so whatever. Oh wait, no, sorry. This is the last red orb door of the entire series. Oh yeah, also, completing a secret mission also gives you a star on your save screen, which, yay. They don't give you any inclination of which mission you cleared, just that you cleared a number of them. Okay, so now we can finally double back and see what the shield does to both of those doors. And yes, the emblem shield does work on both doors, on either side of the hallway. Oh, weird. It's like dark in here. So yeah, as it turns out, there is a flashlight in this game, kinda sorta. Or at least it's a light source. This weird little blue mass in the corner has a light source for you. It's called Luminite, and all it really does is basically act as a flashlight. I don't actually know how necessary it is. I never thought to basically just leave it on its own and not carry a flashlight around for the rest of the game, just because it's so easy to grab, but I wonder if it makes the game any harder by not being able to see in the later parts of it or something. Okay, so more conveyor hallways with spike walls, but now with the addition of a switch you have to hit. It kind of looks like it would be super annoying, but it's really not that bad, just wail on it, it's fine. There is sort of a neat little mechanic up in this hallway though. So this little thing, as best as I can describe, is a Devil Trigger recharge station. I don't know if it has any other name than that, but that's what I'm gonna call it, because that's kind of mostly what it does. From what I can tell, the intention of this thing being here is to basically use Alistor's speed boost while you're in Devil Trigger to navigate this area quicker. The game doesn't give you any hints or leads on this, but if you decide to, it does make the trip a lot easier. Especially if you have the air raid move, which allows you to fly as long as you're in Devil Trigger. Which, given how we have a platforming segment coming up, it does help. I've also taken this as sort of an opportunity to show off Devil Trigger in both of the weapons, although the camera doesn't really give a lot to work with, so here's some pictures instead. Going back to the Devil Trigger charge station though, this is another case of weird, unique DMC weirdness, because this little mechanic doesn't show up in any of the other games, at least not in the same form. And actually, can we go back to the Devil Triggers for a minute, because I need to say something. Okay, so as I'm editing this video, this is the first time I've actually ever seen these models in all of this clarity. The effects and such just have so much mess around the character that it's hard to tell what's going on, and these designs are awesome. However, in a super unpopular opinion I feel, I cannot fucking stand the rest of the Devil Trigger designs in any of the other games. Like, Sin Devil Trigger in DMC5 is fine, but literally the rest of them are just awful and stupid looking. I'm liable to say that I'm gonna get some massive flack for that, but I never liked them. I don't get it. The other characters' Devil Triggers look fine in the rest of the games. Specifically, Virgil in DMC3 looks great, but like, even in DMC3, Dante looks just fucking stupid to me. And DMC5 Dante's regular Devil Trigger is just DMC4 Dante again, complete with this stupid fucking chin stabby. Now, let me backpedal a little bit, because if you like the designs, that's fine. I just can't stand them for I don't even know why. Like, the designs in the first games kind of look like haunted armor, which definitely doesn't look like anything demon related, but it's cool to me, and I just can't get behind whatever they did in the next games for whatever reason. Ultimately, it's a stylistic decision, right? It's something that is up to the person to prefer, because it's a design thing, it's an art thing. But part of me feels crazy because I feel like I'm the only one that absolutely hates how these dudes look. Right. Anyway, sorry, we'll go ahead and get back to the main game now. Let me use them though. Okay, so other than it being nighttime right now, let's also not forget that we can go to the other side of the hallway and use the emblem shield still. Right, so go figure, this other side of the hallway is just a mirrored version of the one we were just in, and the trap room in the next section is also roughly the same, although with the addition of enemies, and also still having the Devil Trigger station. Although the two biggest differences here is the platforming challenge at the end. If you fall into this, you'll get poisoned, which just lowers your health slowly if you're in it, and ends immediately if you step out of it, but also a new firearm. We'll talk about that more here in a second, but for now let's head back out and use the lances real quick. Did somebody say boss arena? This guy really doesn't talk that much, does he? So yeah, third Griffin fight, just do like you have been doing. I will take this opportunity real quick to talk about the Nightmare Beta. This gun specifically is not supremely popular. It's one of only a handful of weapons in the DMC series to use Devil Trigger as ammo, basically. Uniquely, this weapon not only has the capabilities of having its shots bounce around walls, typically after it already hits an enemy to bounce back and hit them again, but also it can be charged, consuming more Devil Triggers for a much more powerful shot. The problem, I think, with this thing is that it uses Devil Trigger, the resource that single-handedly improves your combat damage and then also gives you healing over time, which leveraging that for relatively subpar damage from a firearm is just, you know, not worth it to a lot of people. Back to the Griffin fight though, this one is more specifically similar to the first fight you had with him. All of his attacks and mechanics from that fight are still here, and in terms of new stuff that he does, there just really isn't anything as far as I can tell. The environment's a little bit different. If you decide to take the little side rooms, it'll teleport you up to the top platform and you can use that to get a better shot on him if you want to, but I almost never use it. Except for wait, no, I lied again. Actually, he has a second phase where one of his wings gets clipped. Here he has a couple of different moves. He likes to basically use this thunderstorm attack that protects him for a little while and then also sends lightning bolts towards you. Also, obviously he can't fly anymore, but will try to distance himself from you still. Ultimately though, if you can still get close to him and use melee, that's going to do a lot more damage than using the firearms. But if you want to, you can still just hammer away with ebony and ivory and it'll be fine.
Yours are definitely the powers of Sparta. Even more so. But I cannot let you live. I serve my master Mundus.
You can't fight with that wound.
Mighty is the power of Mundus. Master, grant me one last surge of power. The power to finish him. Master Mundus. Griffin, you have failed me. You are no longer worthy. What? No! Wait! No! Max, no!
You beat him. Maybe it was too easy for you.
Mundus. His heinous ways make me sick, killing even his own, like they were nothing. He's the one that took the life of my mother, my brother, and Shirley. My mother used to always tell me that my father was a man who fought for the weak. He had courage and a righteous heart. In the name of my father, I will kill Mundus.
And yeah, that's the end of Griffin. Also the end of this mission. Okay, now it is time to make our way back to the castle. That is the most unnecessary way to open a drawbridge I've ever seen, but if I ever own a castle, I definitely want that to be the method to lower it. Okay, so the castle is now dark. With it turning nighttime, the atmosphere suddenly gets a lot more oppressive overall. Basically, the rest of the game up until we get to the final area is largely going to be about as dark as this. Like I said before, thinking about the Luminite, I still wonder how necessary it would be to actually carry it around. Like, is it just pitch black in here or what? Also, now that we have a full up enemy list for the most part, I could finally bring up the bestiary. This is a feature that's only showed up in DMC 1, or at least it's had the most importance in DMC 1. Here, you can read up on enemies and bosses and how to defeat them, or otherwise how to avoid some specific problem attacks that they have. The little number in the lower right corner basically indicates all the entries on the specific enemy. A lot of the times this has to do with what attacks they're using, which means in order to see that specific entry, you need to see them using that attack or otherwise that interaction on them at least once. It's here you can learn things like the ability to step on the spike that Shadow forms in order to keep it still and wail on its core, and other things like that. I don't know how exactly to feel about this mechanic specifically, because on paper it does seem really cool, but I think specifically in a game like DMC it doesn't mesh 100% well. I think in maybe a different genre it might just mesh a little bit better, but I mean, who knows? If you're playing on the harder difficulties and you need to get a leg up on a certain enemy, this might be the way to do it. But ultimately, if you're fighting these enemies in the harder difficulties, it's more than likely that you'll just know how to fight them anyway. Yet another instance of stinger jump being used to effectiveness. These guys are called Plasma. They're sorta mimic-based enemies that have the same moveset as you do, including the punches and kicks from Ifrit. They can also go back into their bat form in order to fire lasers at you. Sometimes whenever you fight them, they're liable to split apart with whatever remaining health the pre-split Plasma already has. And this is the second to last new boss that we fight in the game. And real quick before we talk about him, I just want to mention that for some reason that weird visual bug at the top of the screen only happens whenever I fight Nightmare because I'm on an emulator. It's happened a couple of other times earlier, but only for like a split second. But for some reason all of the Nightmare cutscenes do it, and I'm not sure why. But considering how much trouble Nightmare has been giving me in this playthrough, I'm just gonna blame it on him. Anyway, Nightmare is a whole can of worms. Basically the crux of his fight involved hitting the attack switches on either end of the room. This will sort of reconstitute him into a physical form that you can platform on. Otherwise, if you're trying to fight him as a puddle, he will instead take you to an alternate reality, where instead you'll have to fight a previous boss from earlier in the game. You can use this strategically if you just absolutely don't like fighting Nightmare, and spoilers for his third fight, this is what I ended up doing just because I understood those enemies easier than him. When you reconstitute him though, he can use a variety of attacks based on what side you are currently on whenever he decides to attack you. Each of these attacks have their own little ways of counteracting them, them, but ultimately you do have to wait for him to attack in order for you to do any damage to him. He has something similar to the shadow cores, basically, except for instead of being able to use your guns, you have to wait for the core. There's a lot of minute wrinkles with all of his attacks, and a lot of it is going to just boil down to feeling out what attack best is going to help you in the situation, which one's easiest to deal with, and stuff like that. I should also mention that if his core is out and you haven't done very much damage to it, or no damage, then he'll have a unique instance where he'll absorb your devil trigger. This will in turn fuel his own devil trigger eventually if you do it too many times, which at that rate, if you're in normal mode or higher, it'll probably just end up killing you. He's already a pretty tough fight just as is. So yeah, here's what his alternate dimension attack looks like. Anytime he gets this attack off, you'll always be met with Sargassos first, and then in each of his appearances, he'll change the boss that you're forced to fight in here in order of their appearances throughout the playthrough. They have all of their old attacks, but with drastically lower health bars. I do not think I can express to you how good that just felt. Big bridge, but now it's at nighttime. No, not that blue stone. Nice. I almost forgot about these ones. They're super rare and super expensive. At least relatively speaking if you buy them from the shop. But I'm sure you can tell they're super useful in a pinch. So I don't necessarily have a whole lot to say about this part of the game specifically. We're gonna be skipping around a lot. It's just the castle again, but with new lighting, which is certainly cool if you're going through the game, but makes commentary pretty uninteresting all throughout the board. So in this section of the game, we have to basically use these mirror portal things to navigate the castle now. A lot of the doors are locked or just simply don't exist anymore, which all in all works for me just because I don't exactly want to go through the entire castle again. But it can make navigation kind of confusing if you don't immediately remember where these places go. These guys are Frosts. They're known for using ice attacks in order to deal damage to you. Their file in the bestiary actually indicates that Ifrit does a lot of damage to them, because I guess they're ice. Which is almost kind of a weird misnomer, because Ifrit is the power weapon, it's supposed to do more damage anyway, but whatever, it works. Whenever they encase themselves in ice though, you have to try to break them out of it as fast as you can, else their HP will regenerate to a certain point. And they like to do this a lot. And now time for the weirdest puzzle in DMC1. Not because of its solution, but just because, well, look at it. What do you mean a T-Rex is firing fireballs at me? The solution here is pretty simple, just hit the projectile back 3 times in order to blow up the skeleton and make it to where you can progress again. Weirdly, the solution to tell you that you even need to do this is in the room that he's currently firing at you in, which, because this is an active and strange threat, you wouldn't think to necessarily check something in the same room that you're in with it. And I'd like to imagine that the only reason I figured it out as a kid is because I kind of just got frustrated and started swinging my sword. I certainly couldn't read back then, so, I mean, you know. Neat. Also, yeah, here's the hint for this room. What I find pretty cool about this room is that you can actually skip it if you get an upgrade for Alistar called Air Hike. It's basically just a double jump. Normally you would have to jump across these platforms, which were always there and always have their collision, but only show up whenever the lightning strikes. It's not a big deal either way, but if you're trying to be quick about this mission, then yeah, just use Air Hike.
A man with guts and honor. I like that. But it's a shame you serve Mundus.
Okay, third Nelangelo encounter, and I'm sure by now you know what that means. Let me start off by saying that this fight is brutal. What I haven't really mentioned with Nelangelo until now is that he gets a handful of new attacks, not very many, but in place of that, he gets new combos and mix-ups that he can do to you. Like, yeah, make no mistake, he gets new attacks as well, but it's the little things that he does to throw you off and stuff like that is where a lot of the actual challenge from this fight comes from. And really, that's how all of his encounters work. Also, he hits like a truck now. One good combo will end up taking over half of your HP away. But the real takeaway that I actually want to highlight in this fight is a handful of new attacks he gets relating to these summon swords. Of course, if this is the first time you're seeing this game or playing it, then naturally this is going to throw you for a loop. But those of us who are super familiar with this series will understand this as a greater start to this character's sort of trademark fighting style. But I'll elaborate on that in here just in a second. This fight specifically acts as an honest-to-God test of your abilities so far. Any good boss in any good game does that for sure. But remember what I said in the beginning, this is the first definitive character action game. The sort of rival character trope is present in many games of its ilk. But out of all the things that DMC1 gets right, I think it goes a long way to make this fight specifically memorable, just because of how this character and how this fight has been portrayed so far. You share a weirdly tenuous connection with this enemy, and because this is a video game, your agency and player expression going against what is essentially a dark reflection of your capabilities means that you basically have an even one-on-one fight with this guy. It's because of this fight, way back whenever I played the game for the first time, that I sort of make it a rule for myself to not use any item in a character action game where it's sort of framed as a duel. Unless, of course, they somehow use items too. They don't get to, so why would I? This same little weird thing that I do ended up evolving into my first playthrough of Dark Souls and how I kind of relate Dark Souls nowadays anyway. Basically, anytime I go through a duel, NPC or player, I opt not to heal unless the other person does it first, which I know is commonplace for that game specifically, rather that series I guess, but I wouldn't have inclined for that to be my default if it wasn't for this game, and I don't know, it's just one of those things that makes this a particularly memorable fight for me, and to many others as well.
Virgil, Dante, happy birthday.
Wow! I want chocolate! No, I want chocolate!
Trish, Virgil has been defeated. You know what you must do. Now go.
Yes, Master.
Ow. Okay, so that was a lot. I guess I need to talk about it now. So yeah, plot twist. Nello Angelo was actually Dante's twin brother, Virgil, who, during the entirety of this game, has had very little mention over time. The only other mention being the description for the amulet in the first place. I think Virgil's involvement with this game, and his portrayal as a boss fight, sort of further proves my point to how well Nello Angelo is handled in this game specifically. Through defeating Nello Angelo, we end up obtaining his half of the amulet. This turns it into a new item called the Perfect Amulet, but more importantly, it fully unlocks Force Edge into Sparta, the namesake weapon of sort of the key pivotal player in this series, being Sparta himself. I kind of have a lot to say for Sparta, and a lot of it's good and some of it is not so good. For one, man, I really do love me a good meat sword. That's a horrible thing to say out of context, but it sort of gives me the same vibe as like Soul Edge and the Soul Calibur games if you've ever played any of those. Just this sort of weird, freaky looking weapon that shouldn't exist. And its other little capabilities like being able to transform into a scythe and a spear are added purely because it just looks cool, which I'm super down for. It even has design aspects of Force Edge in it, namely the hilt and the handle of the original weapon. Interesting thing to note here, and it'll sort of tie into the not so positive things I have to say for Sparta specifically, is that you might notice whenever you go to a shop that you can't buy any new moves for Sparta. Instead, any move you currently have for Sparta, with the exception of the Devil Trigger abilities and Air Hike, are sort of inherited over from Alastor into Sparta. This means that if you haven't bought a move for Alastor, it will not appear on Sparta until you purchase the move for Alastor. The only real noteworthy thing about Sparta, in terms of how different it is from the other swords, is that it does do more damage. That, and then also the attacks you use, depending on what they are, will actually change the weapon to its spear form or scythe form respectively. Things like Stinger will make it go into the spear form and give you a lot more extra reach, which is pretty cool. But in terms of its usefulness, especially on the more survival side, if you're in danger or something, I don't end up using Sparta very much, and namely, that's because there's no Devil Trigger for it. There's not really any explanation for this, but nonetheless it kinda hurts the weapon. Essentially, this means that it's something that you mess around with for maybe a minute or two and then go back to Alastor or Ifrit just because they have the ability to heal you. And yeah, that'll wrap up the Sparta segment for now, but don't worry, we will get back to Sparta here in a little bit, just not right now. Oh. Cool. Bro, they took my fucking elevator. And they replaced it with water. I'm just kidding, it's fine. So the game actually lies here. You're not timed, we just have to beat Nightmare. And because I haven't used an Untouchable yet, Whoa, freaky. Yeah, so these little shits are called nobodies. We won't see them for very long. Nope, hold on a sec. Right, anyway, so nobodies. These things kind of have a whole bunch of stuff that they can do, as evident by the cutscene that just interrupted me. If you let them idle for too long, they'll put a mask on, which makes it to where they get a couple new attacks, as well as just deal more damage to you. I also only literally just noticed that whenever they're big like that, they can kind of throw the eyeball that's on the side of their body and it'll explode if it hits you, but I guess they can pick it back up and throw it at you. I had no idea. They also have this weird, like, double drop kick jump attack that they like to do a lot, which will send you on your ass if it hits you, which is mostly just annoying. Also, they can take your devil trigger if you let them dance for too long. They're obviously a lot more dangerous whenever they're larger. If you decide to hit them in their face, you'll eventually break the mask and make them much more manageable as normal enemies. You can kind of equate them to mini-bosses when they have the mask on, but I don't really know if they count so long as you know to hit them in the face when they have the mask. Yeah, no, so this area is absolutely awesome. It kinda sucks you don't see it for very long. Like, look at the skybox, it's just this crazy swirling vortex of I don't know what's going on. The music here is unique, and even the battle theme only plays the one time, but it's completely different to the rest of the game. I really don't know what the intention here was, other than having just a particularly weird standout moment at the very end of the game. But there is a big part of me that wish it lasted just a little longer. Whoa, we're upside down now. Okay, so... Welcome to hell! I know, wrong game, we'll get to it later. This area is kinda neat in a grotesque sort of way. A lot of weird fleshy walls and bones everywhere, you have to cut the doors open to open them. Every time I go through here, it kind of reminds me of the underworld in God of War 1 of all things, which, supposedly, God of War was inspired by DMC 1, and if that's the case, then this checks out. There's all kinds of weird stuff here.
Dante!
It's Nightmare again, yay! Let's get this over with.
You fool! You're so easy.
Trish, you?
Humans. What sweets. You should know better than to trust a stranger. Your presence has become a hindrance to my master's bloody scheme. Now die!
Right, so little thing, but Trish betrays you here. She adds an extra little fold to this fight by basically firing lightning at you intermittently. It does do some damage, but mostly the issue comes in removing your position, forcing you to move in inopportune areas and such. Also during this fight, whenever you reduce Nightmare's HP to 0, you have to wail on his core after he gets that little sliver back in order to kill him for good, otherwise he'll come back with some extra HP.
Dante! Dante, why did you save my life?
Because you look like my mother. Now get out of my sight. The next time we meet, it won't be like this.
Dante!
Don't come any closer, you devil! You may look like my mother, but you're nowhere close to her! You have no soul. You have the face, but you'll never have her fire!
You two have nailed me, Trish. You know the rules.
I just want to say for the record, that fight kicked my ass. I don't think I like Nightmare very much. Wow, the music here is crazy cool. I like the big demon door with all the demon hands, that's really cool. Right, so these weird, nasty hallways have these tendril things. They'll sort of latch onto you, and after a second, they'll start sapping your health away and cause you to stagger. Just slash them away with any one of your swords. Don't punch them with Ifrit, though, that doesn't work. No, I need that. Stop that. Also, yeah, the floor will just randomly attack you here if you're standing too still. So, you know, that's mean. Cool. I wish they would do that more in other games.
Again I must face a Sparta. Strange fate, isn't it?
Strange and ironic that it will end the same way.
Irony has favored you this time. Look, there.
Trish!
Don't even think about it. Blink. She dies.
You!
So sad that humans will always be humans. No more. Has the Spartan blood been spoiled over the ages? Now, die!
Trish! Trish! No!
Useless scum. Failure is one thing, but taking an odd behavior like that. What is the matter? It is time to end your pitiful life.
How much longer are you going to keep zapping? Come out and show yourself, Mundus!
Those eyes. Deep in them, I see the same light as in Sparta's eyes.
Why my mother?
That useless being? If you need a mother, I can create it. As many as you want. Just like I created Trish.
Silence!
Okay, this is it, the final battle. And for some reason it's an on-rails shooting segment, but whatever. So Mundus has a whole bunch of stuff that he can do. I feel like that's the upteenth time I've said that. Basically, attacking him here involves hitting his little weird orbs that he's using to protect himself first. From there, you basically just mash your fire button to deal as much damage to his actual health bar as you can. You can also do like a corkscrew dive attack if you press the melee button, which is not supremely effective, but whenever he flies away from you by first diving into you, this is a good way to do a bunch of damage to him. Your third and final thing that you can do is to basically use all of your devil trigger gauges at once to summon this weird dragon thing, in which case if it hits him it does a ton of damage. Also, for some reason the flight controls are inverted, which is super annoying. Like the swimming, it's something you have to get used to. Oh, that's a good sign. Okay, we're in phase 2 now, and Mundus has even more attacks he can do to us. He's doing the orb thing again, except for this time they're just sentries that fire at you. Going out of your way to attack them will end up charging a lot of devil trigger at once. He can do other things too, like summon a giant lava wyvern thing to attack you. It'll slowly follow you as it closes the distance and tries to do things like a breath attack and stuff at you. He has these ethereal sword swipes, and even a following pillar attack, kind of like Phantom. Devil Trigger here is actually kind of super important. It does all the stuff that you expect Devil Trigger to do already, but this time we have it on Sparta. For one, whenever you do a sword attack now, it basically triples the hitbox size, which effectively means you can reach Mundus from anywhere on the stage if you have Devil Trigger active. Similarly speaking, using your gun attack will now instead fire these rapid fire fireballs. How many times can I say fire? Which is good if you want to stay quick on your feet.
My mother risked her life for me. And now you, too. I should have saved you.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
This was my mother's. Now I'm giving it to you. My father's also here now. Rest in peace.
Okay, so I actually need to backtrack here for a sec. So the scene that just played is often regarded as one of the most infamous scenes in DMC1, and largely for the entire DMC community. That's solely because of this line right here that Dante says.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
This line is specifically weird, ugly, stilted, and kind of ham-fisted. So it makes sense to make fun of, so why do I have an issue with it? Primarily, the entire game is like that. This is supposed to be an emotional moment that's done kinda sloppily, but in the same way that the rest of the Resident Evil games are. Or at least, all of the early ones. The writing in Resident Evil, early or not, is best described as a B-movie action horror thing. And specifically in regards to DMC1, the sort of through line for the tone is a lot of the same thing. This entire series is known for being kind of silly in the best of cases. A lot of people in the DMC community just likes to make fun of this scene in specific, and I think I'm just kind of tired of it. And I know I'm making this a bigger deal than it actually is. People make fun of it because they like the game, because they like this cutscene and they think it's funny. And you're certainly allowed to think like that. I just have to ask, why does it have to be this cutscene? Like, it just makes me sad because the one time the game actually wants to put its heart out there in a really ugly, sort of really heartfelt way, people make fun of it. In fact, if you're looking hard enough, you can find instances like this in basically every one of the DMC games. For example,
We are the sons of Sparta. Within each of us flows his blood. But more importantly, his soul! And now, my soul is saying it wants to stop you!
like, why don't people make fun of that line? It's arguably even more stupid. I don't know, I've said my piece, and like I said, I'm making this a bigger deal than it actually is, so I guess I'll just give it a rest. Anyway. Okay, so two things here. One, we don't have Sparta anymore. Shit. You can't use Devil Trigger with it anyway, so it's whatever, but I mean, kinda sucks that we lost it. The other thing, we're actually timed this time. Sorta as a result of this, if you end up dying for any reason during this section, it'll restart you back to the beginning of the mission, whether or not you have yellow orbs. We can't necessarily afford to take any enemies here, so only fight the ones that you're forced to. Okay, so sorry to interrupt here, y'all. We have something of a photosensitivity warning coming up right now. There's another one later on as well. So go ahead and look away from the screen if you are photosensitive, and you're safe to look back whenever the character starts speaking again.
Has been opened. Dante, you are not getting away. This is where you will die.
I'm not going anywhere! Besides, there's no place to go! Look around! This'll be your burial ground as well!
What is the matter? Here your powers are weak, human.
No.
You'll be okay. You can do it.
What? Mother.
Hi, yeah, me again. Sorry, here's the other warning. You're good when the characters speak again.
Dante, use my power!
Trish! Okay.
It looks like we have a winner.
Jackpot.
Dante, I will return, and I will rule this world!
Goodbye. And when you do come back, give my regards to my son, will ya?
Trish!
Dante. Dante.
Trish. Devils never cry. These tears... Tears are a gift only humans have.
We're too late.
No, Trish. It's never too late. And we humans never give up. Are you ready?
Yes!
Let's rock. above everyone's head, no different.
Like the sky. I feel like my heart is becoming clear.
Let's not forget, though, the Underworld's evil is still alive. They will someday return.
There's no need to worry, right? 'Cause the world has the legendary Dark Knight Dante. And his sidekick. Devil never cry. Yes? Okay, great. Where's the place? We'll be right there. This one has the password. Sounds heavy.
Okay, let's get it over with in 10 minutes. Can't let a single one of those suckers live.
5 minutes.
More than enough.
Okay, and that's it. That's DMC1, the beginning of a series that had a niche following and eventually grew into something of a household name for the character action genre. I really won't have any other opportunity to mention it, so I'll just say it now. If you decide to play on a completed save file, one that's already completed the game, then you'll have all of your weapons and upgrades for whenever you first beat the game. It's an NG Plus mode, just the only difference is that it stays on the same difficulty. You'll also unlock a hard mode, which naturally has all the enemies being tougher, but also remixes their placements, so you'll see some of the harder enemies earlier and stuff like that. Beating that mode will unlock you Legendary Dark Knight difficulty, which is even harder, and when you beat that, you'll be able to get Sparta as a playable character. He basically just looks like Dante, but instead he starts the game with Force Edge and a new weapon, which is Yamato. Which Yamato, even though it looks like a katana and looks like it would have a different moveset, is just the same as Alistar. It even has lightning and everything. But I mean, it's a cool inclusion. The coolest thing about Yamato, though, is that whenever you use it, it sort of turns into Sparta as you're using Sparta. And it even gives you the Sparta DT in the Mundus fight, but you get to use it across the whole game, which is cool. Hi, sorry, me again. I actually got this super wrong. As it turns out, the only time you can actually use the Sparta DT is whenever you're fighting Mundus. What I was actually seeing was footage of old Game Shark codes being used on OG PS2 hardware, which basically just gives you debug options, and one of them is being able to use the Sparta DT anywhere you want. There's no way to unlock it, and that makes me sad. Okay, anyway. He also still gets access to Ifrit whenever you find that. Also, exclusive to the re-releases of DMC1, there is another difficulty option called Dante Must Die. This is a super hard difficulty, with further harder to kill enemies, and even more aggressive placement in the harder enemies in earlier areas. Beating that mode will net you Super Dante, which is a Dante that has infinite Devil Trigger. Using the Nightmare Beta will now consume no ammo, so it could be functionally seen as the best weapon in the game if you're using Super Dante. Although, that being said, if you're using Super Dante, you're gonna be in Devil Trigger all the time anyway, so whatever. I'm also just fresh off of losing my fucking mind just now, because as it turns out, there's a usable item I never even found and have seen nobody talk about. This item is called the Bangle of Time. Basically, whenever you use it, it freezes time for everything except for Dante. It consumes Devil Trigger in order to do this, but being in Super Dante, it doesn't consume any Devil Trigger. As the series goes on, they'll have these little time stop mechanics in other weird little ways. Ones that are better implemented, go figure. But it's just weird to see some sort of evolution of that in this game, especially because, again, this is the first time that I've seen it. You also get it from a secret mission, and like I said before, I haven't completed all the secret missions in DMC1, so that explains why I haven't found it. But yeah, I think that's all I functionally have to say for Devil May Cry 1. The weird Resident Evil 4 Splinter that became its own series, that not only became important to me, but to hundreds of thousands of other people as well. I want to take this opportunity to get just a little sappy with y'all. I've had this YouTube account for 12 years. I've been sort of off and on it, trying to make content for as long as I can, and ultimately falling short just because I couldn't keep a schedule, or I was too busy, or I was just disinterested in what I was making. I'm hoping now, though, that I found my niche. I like making video essays a lot, and even though I know these RTLGs aren't as popular as I hope for them to be, really, I'm making them for me. I just kind of always wanted something to put my thoughts down on, and with the rise of all these video essays made by thousands of other people, I figure why not? This particular video has been kind of a gigantic project, but I never not had fun making it. Weird issues and problems that I had were ultimately not that big in the grand scheme of things. And I hope I can keep making these videos, not just for all the DMC games that I played, but all the other things that impacted me too whenever I was growing up. Even some more modern stuff, eventually. Stuff like that still makes an impression on me. And I mean, hey, at the end of the day, I hope if you do watch this, you actually get something out of it. Even if it's just background noise, that's fine too. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you want more video essays and other cool stuff, if that suits your fancy. And if you feel like being particularly charitable, you can join the Patreon too. It's only got a $1 goal on it, and that'll get you into a Discord where we can maybe talk or play some games together. Paying for the 1 tier will also have your name at the end of these videos. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Stay tuned for whenever I do DMC 3 next. You know, sometime within this century, hopefully. And yeah, have a good one, y'all.
you